let's just address this directly. Some people are saying that having a prime minister from the nobility desk is a step backward from democracy. What would you say to them?
I would say that we're using different rulers to measure democracy. And the ruler that I'm using is the Tongan Constitution. And the Constitution allows for 9 nobles representatives to be elected into Parliament and 17 people's representatives to be elected from the people's 17 constituencies. I ran as a candidate, not just as a candidate for the nobility, but as a candidate from Tonga, as a Tongan citizen and as a member of Parliament representing Hapai. I ran against the former Prime Minister and won fair and square in a very transparent process that's very democratic. And so I'm not too sure about the racism or the classism that is being imposed on the current government. I think that everything was done legally and was according to the Tongan Constitution.
How is the government's relationship with the monarch at this stage?
I think the relationship of the government in the past has been tested and has been challenging. And under the previous government and under the current government, our mandate is not just to deliver for the people of Tonga, but also to re-establish and to foster and harness the relationship with our monarchy, one that is pivotal to the survival of our nation, one that is prioritized by our people, and one that we are most welcome to cherish and to ensure that it prospers for the stability and for the future of our country.
Let's go back in track with you entering to Parliament. You did mention in the beginning that you wanted to unite the Parliament. How has that been going?
Since Parliament opened and we swore in the members of Cabinet, Parliament members, and also appointed the chairs of all the select committees in Parliament, we haven't met yet, but I am quite confident that a lot of the unity that we are talking about at the start, from the outset, has already begun. In terms of Hapai, being the first Prime Minister from Hapai, I'm very proud to say that the Hapai Development Committee has already met. We have some priority agendas for the people of Hapai, and despite what people are saying in terms of the relationship, that me as a member of nobility and from Hapai, we are working together and very closely with the 2 representatives from Hapai 12 and 13. And they've been quite cooperative and are willing to work together with the 2 members of Nobles representatives from Hapai, and that's myself and the Deputy Speaker, on some of our agendas. And in the coming weeks and in the next few months, we'll be delivering street lights, solar lights to the communities in Hapai, as well as outboard motors, engines that would support the local fisheries, not just in our estate as noble representatives, but also in the constituencies for Hapai 12 and Hapai 13. So I think that's part of the tangible results of the unity that we're working with. And apart from the unity we have in government and our cabinet, we're extending that to local government and through non-cabinet members in Hapai.
Let's step into the other shady, darker side of Tonga, which involves with drugs. Drug is a growing issue here in Tonga. How serious is it to you?
The issue with illicit drugs in Tonga is the fact that those that are affected in the country are not only impacting themselves, but are creating social harm that impacts your community, your family. The social fabric of Tonga is at stake if we are not careful. And so the government has a 3-pronged approach: supply reduction, demand reduction, and harm reduction. And evidently, what we've experienced is that the work that the government has been doing, both the current government and previous governments on supply reduction, is working. The amount of illicit drugs that is captured around the region is due to the cooperation of interagencies, not just in the Pacific, but in the wider region. That sharing of intelligence has captured drugs that were destined for Tonga, through Tonga, into Australia and New Zealand. And the amount of prosecutions and the successful results of those investigations has meant that we are now seeing more lifers in jail in Toli than in the history of Tonga. And that's a result of the work that we've been doing on supply reduction. My focus now with the Illicit Drugs Task Force is to move and focus less, even though it's as important and the work is still ongoing, on supply, but more on demand and harm reduction. And for the first time since we called the first meeting this year of the Illicit Drugs Task Force, we involved the non-government organizations. And in allocating the $5 million that is budgeted by the government for harm and supply and demand reduction, we'll be involving directly the non-government organizations. And this is also timely because last year the government and parliament approved the youth diversion program, which means that youth are now diverted from the courts back to their communities. So working with non-government organizations such as the Salvation Army will be handling the children and the future of Tonga outside of the legal system so that their opportunities for getting work, for getting visas, for travel is not compromised because of a record and because of the poor decisions that they've made in the past. So we're focusing on harm and on top of the supply reduction, we're focusing on harm reduction and demand reduction.
As your role last year as Speaker of Parliament, there was a suggestion put forward to have also the members of Parliament test for illicit drugs. Now you're the Prime Minister. Are there any further thoughts on that?
I think testing is important. In fact, with the Police Commissioner, we're currently working on testing the wastewater septic tanks in government buildings. So through that testing, we'll be able to identify buildings and ministries that have illicit drugs in their system. From there, we can have targeted testing, as in the personal testing of staff and members of Parliament. But before we move into that stage, we're currently actively working on testing the wastewater systems in government buildings, and that would include the police stations themselves, the Prime Minister's office, any public facilities such as schools and high schools and hospitals.
Just a few weeks ago, a staff from your office was arrested in relation to illicit drug equipment. What have you done post to this news in your office not to experience that kind of stand at that time and a way forward for your office, because in trying to gain the trust of the public in respect to this office?
So I think the first point, Marianne, is that we have to acknowledge the fact that illicit drugs isn't just a problem for those who are socially vulnerable. This is an issue that applies to across the whole nation, from all levels of society, from leadership to government workers to public servants to the general public, right through to our youth. And I'm very proud of the work that our Ministry of Police have done. They have continued to work under the supply reduction to capture these criminal networks. And obviously, one of those unfortunate people who was captured worked, and I say worked because since we were informed by the police, he was put on leave. And most recently, after we reported him to the Public Service Commission, The PSC has subsequently put him on suspension due to the nature of the issue. But we are waiting for the courts and the investigation to be complete. So I'm happy that the police are doing their job and that the law is applied to everyone equally, even someone who's in a senior position in the government, especially under the leadership of the Prime Minister's office.
We've seen new funding from New Zealand recently, but is Tonga becoming too dependent on partners?
Look, Tonga is a donor-dependent country. That is a matter of fact. And part of the focus of the current government is on empowering our economic base. And that is so that we can move from being a dependent country on donor support to an economically empowered country. And that means that we need to have concerted effort in a countrywide response to our current dilemma. And that is, we are not truly sovereign until we have total control of our fiscal books. And from Tonga's overdependence on bilateral and multilateral aid to our heavy indebtedness, these all take away from our sovereignty. And as a new government, these are all inherited problems, one that we are looking to resolve and nip in the bud.
Another factor that you mentioned recently is the repayment of the loans to China, which we're looking at the end of it by 2030. You've also mentioned that the repayment of loan that could have been used to fund domestically, but however, we have New Zealand and Australia stepping in also to help with our financial problems. Is it safe to say that New Zealand and Australia is somewhat helping Tonga to pay the loans when they are stepping in to cover the void of what we could have used that funding domestically?
Look, I think hindsight is 2020. It's easy to say, oh, maybe we shouldn't have taken the loan. But the fact is, previous governments made that commitment. And as leader of the government, I think that Tonga should abide by its contractual obligations, irrespective of where the geopolitics is and what country we owe money to. We took out a loan, we're committed to paying it, and we'll pay it off by 2030.
You're coming up with your 100 days. What have you actually delivered so far?
In our 100-day plan, we're hoping to realize greater value for taxpayers' funding. So there's a considered effort across all the ministries to lower the obstacle to doing business, to creating higher efficiency in the back office, and also to cut the queues. We're working on creating online portals that will enable people to not have to turn up in person, but to access government services online. A lot of this is an old ambition. It's something that government's been looking at in previous governments, but something that we're adamant that we can deliver in the short time that we have. And I believe it's important that we pick those low-hanging fruits in the first 100 days.
What decision that you have delivered that you're so proud of?
Well, this decision is regarding the Lolohea, which is a government-owned company. It's been a hot potato for previous governments. And in starting the board as chair of the government-owned enterprise, I told the board that we won't be accepting any meeting fees, which came as a shock, but I believe it's important for us to be a profitable organization and that Lolohea delivers its mandate of bringing safe, reliable and efficient domestic air travel. Lolohea is in a transitional period. We accept that the fiscal books aren't where we want it to be. And so we've had a few unsolicited proposals to augment and support Tonga's domestic air services. The CEO for Air New Zealand was also here as well, and we've had great meetings and conversations with him that will follow up in terms of Tonga's air connectivity to New Zealand. But Chatham is here, and we've initiated discussions. I've directed him to our new CEO, Lolohea, and we will evaluate each proposal on its merits.
What gives you confidence about Tonga's future?
I think that Tonga's future is determined, like it was in the past, by its people. And now the people are even more empowered through our democracy, through our governance institutions. We have checks and balances, and we have a working and healthy constitution that has guided us through our modern era. And as long as we are grounded in that truth, that Tonga is sovereign in its identity and its people and its culture, and that we remain respectful of each other, we'll be able to weather any storm. And I take comfort in the fact that ultimately we're a resilient people. And given the natural disasters and the international challenges and all of the red tides that arrive on our shores, we remain as one people. And the imagery I have is that we are united under one flag, and that's most evident when you see the Red Sea at Tonga Games. And not to politicize the game, but it's a mirror of what Tonga's potential and capability is.
In one sentence, with no politics, what kind of country do you want Tonga to be in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, I want Tonga to be resilient, to be prosperous, to be independent, and to be sovereign.